So, welcome everybody to the Family Diplomacy Initiative. This is our series of family issue presentations. It's the third of four meetings happening monthly to talk about issues that are having major impacts on families in the world. Today we have three family diplomats who are going to be presenting on different issues from their different perspectives in their countries. We are going to start with Nusrat Jahan Nipa, who is joining us from Bangladesh, who's going to be talking about climate change and its impacts on families. That the next person will be Chia Terrence, who is joining us, who is from Cameroon, but joining us from United Arab Emirates, who is going to be talking about the slow-going, essentially civil war in Cameroon and its impact on his family and more broadly on Cameroon. And then lastly, Joshua Kisubika, who's joining us from Uganda and is going to be talking about poverty in his country and its impacts on families. So one other thing to mention, one other thing to mention is that we are going to proceed with one presentation at a time. And so presentation, discussion, presentation, discussion, presentation, discussion. That's how it's going to work. And so, for those of you who just joined us, Joe, it's good to see you. Please just make sure to write your feedback in the Zoom chat. Everybody who's involved here should be providing feedback to our family diplomats who are going to be presenting. I will take, I think actually, Riley, would you do me a favor and take time? So time the presenters, and when they reach 2 minutes before 15 minutes, if they take 13 minutes, put a note in the Zoom chat and actually just alert them and just say you've got 2 minutes left. So they each have a total of 15 minutes. So any questions before we start? Okay. If there are no questions, Nusrat, I don't know if you are ready to present.
Hello,
Hey, Nusrat.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just uploaded my recorded version because it was my holiday and I just back to my home right now. I'm feeling so tired and I got it earlier, so that's why I just uploaded my recorded
Okay. So I need
presentation.
to, yeah, it would have been great to get that sooner rather than later. But let me go to, I think, what is the right, I have to find the folder, so hold on a second and let me pull it up and then I'll play it for you. So okay, Nusrat, I think I see your presentation and okay, I think we're ready to go. I'm going to share my screen. And so, so part of the reason why Nusrat is uploading this is we have connection issues in some countries. So it's better for some people just to present a video rather than to speak live and have it break up. So I'm about to share her presentation.
In 2018, in June, I got a phone call from one of my classmates. And she said, "Did you know Shizuti has passed on?" And I thought she was joking because Shizuti is my best friend. So if anything happened to her, definitely I will know. Then she said, maybe you haven't contacted her lately. And I found, yes, I didn't contact her lately, but it's not longer than 5 days. As Chezuti was staying in my capital city and she was staying with her family, so I really didn't want to bother her by my phone call or text. So this is the picture of me and my best friend who passed away in 2018 from dengue. I still believe she is here. I still believe she's here when I see her gifts. And she was very young. She was only 25. She was courageous, happy, and a healthy girl who was my best friend, who was my only friend, who knew all my secrets. So, we all have that kind of friend who know all the secrets of us. And then I found she was suffering from dengue while staying in capital city. Her condition worsened and the doctor sent her to ICU, but she couldn't survive. This is the picture of me and my mother. And my mother, she has been suffering from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease since 2015. She was near death in 2022. We couldn't understand that she would survive. But somehow, by the grace of Almighty and with the treatment of doctor, she survived, and still she's surviving. Still, she's under the treatment, and as you can see, her health condition is not good. She's lean and thin. Now you may wonder why I'm telling this story, because these are not related to climate change that we typically know, like died by flood, died by cyclone, died by riverbank erosion, died by landslides. So these are not that cases, right? So give me a couple of minutes, I'm gonna explain. So this is the small view of health-related illness due to climate change, and I called it a small view, even though the presentation usually has the overview. But if I try to make an overview, I think it would take hundreds of slides to describe the deaths and the ratio, how it affected us. So as a riverine country, Bangladesh faces different types of natural disasters, including heat waves, cyclones, flood, riverbank erosion, landslides because of climate change, and which kills the thousands of people every year. And this is the ratio of this year in 2024, in the last week of April, within just 1 week, 10 people died due to heat stroke. And a few days back, we experienced a flood in August 2024. And within a few days, 20 people died because of that flood, and 187,629 families were affected because of that flood. This year, till August, even not till now, in 2024, 25,701 people admitted to hospital for dengue cases. And per week, 11 people died of dengue. Can you imagine? And this year, 2024, till now, 136 people died by dengue. In 2021, 15,000 deaths happened due to ozone-related chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. 40% of deaths from lower respiratory tract infection were caused by air pollution. I counted the death of air pollution because pollution and climate change related to each other. The climate changed rapidly because of pollution. Now, it's the impact of climate change of human health in Bangladesh, how it impacts and the ways of impacts, you can say. And I categorized it, this is my research, you can say. I categorized in the direct impacts and the indirect impacts. The direct impacts we can see, which is very visible, which people can understand very easily, which is like the causing injuries, death, heat stroke, cardio diseases, and mental disorder because of floods, cyclone, heat waves, earthquakes, and other natural disasters that we can often see the news on television, like 10 people died by flood and 20 people died by riverbank erosion, or 10 people died by landslides. And the indirect impacts that I really want to emphasize, because this is overlooked. Every time it's overlooked. And if we count these one, we will see like thousands of people die. Thousands of people died by different ways. So the indirect impacts, we can see the vector-borne disease, like the dengue, and dengue usually happen when the temperature is getting higher, because high temperature is favorable to grow the insects rapidly, for example, dengue, as I said, and also the pathogen evolution and the higher humidity. And cardio and respiratory diseases, it's also because of the high temperature and also the air pollution. And then infectious diseases like leishmaniasis is also part of the water pollution. And water usually polluted when like disaster happen, like the flood and cyclone. People don't get the pure water or the hygiene water, and that moment they just get different sort of illness. And the malnutrition because of the drought, and also losing jobs and property after disasters makes income lower and create malnutrition. And then skin disease is also part of the air pollution and water pollution. Like I have a severe allergic reaction. And then water and foodborne disease like diarrhea. And this number is really high. The number of people died by diarrhea in every year here in Bangladesh is really, really high. Mm. And the zoonotic disease from animals to the human, and it's also happened. And then epidemic is also part of the climate change, because the high temperature, when the temperature is getting high, the viruses are getting the favorable environment to grow, and the spreading virus from host to guest from one country to another country is also part of the climate change. The high temperature, like when the temperature is getting higher, and there are so many inactive viruses, and the ice are melting, and they become the active, and then they spread across the world. So this is the reason. And also these indirect impacts is always overlooked, as I said, and it's like the cancerous diseases, because it takes long time to happen. So people just always ignore this. Not only people, but also the other like the government and also the experts. Everyone just ignore this. Every time I see like this is ignored, because people don't understand it. Even some people don't understand it, how it happened. For example, my mother, we even didn't know that this is the part of this is the part of the climate change. And when my mother went on the doctor, and doctor asked our lifestyle. The doctor asked the lifestyle of my mother, and then she said like she just used wood as part of cooking, and we didn't know that. And then we understand like using wood for cooking is just pollute the air, and it also create this disease like the COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So this is really important to understand. And there are thousands of people died by this. There are thousands of people died by the indirect impacts that we can see. And this is another picture, and this is very pathetic. And this is a picture a few days back. And as I said, like we experienced a flood, and this is a 5-year-old boy from Sweden passed away in the recent flood, as I said, and the family members are waiting for the funeral, as everything was submerged, The funeral required a dry place to bury the dead bodies, so they couldn't arrange it. So they were waiting. And this is not the only case. There are more than maybe 5 or 6 cases that we heard, and like they couldn't arrange their funeral. So this is so pathetic. Now is the possible solution and call to action. This is my research, part of my research, and I just tried to say it briefly. This is not on the whole, because there are so many solutions and experts also understand it better. So the first one is like reforestation and afforestation. This is obviously an important as always. And then stop unplanned urbanization. This is really important. It's crucial to focus on this, because I feel like all the pollutions here in Bangladesh is just because of unplanned urbanization, including air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution, and everything. So I really want to say the government, and they really need to focus on this and then propose the strong laws and policies against global greenhouse gas emissions, like the higher emitting nations, and impose laws immediately. The higher emitting nations, they are just emitting greenhouse gases, while the while the countries those are not emitting greenhouse gases, or the lower emitting gases, but still they are facing these issues because of the geographical location, as we are the river, living in the riverine country. Bangladesh is a low-lying country, so this type of country suffer a lot, while they are not emitting greenhouse gases as like the other countries, as like the other nations. So the higher emitting nations, they must account and they must impose laws immediately. And then international cooperation, definitely we need fund, and definitely we need the manpower and the innovative people to work with us. So this is also important. And then build adoption strategies, even though I always believe prevention is better than cure, but also adoption is the part of this. So definitely we must focus on it. For temperature, high temperature, we need the tree plantation, and also making cooling zones in the high temperature areas, and tracking ill and pregnant women and children health condition during high temperature. And in that case, apps could be used as far as I just researched. And also advocacy, this is also important, arranging projects on how to combat health related issues, and then focusing on innovation that improve the adoption studies and stop pollution. This is also important because I don't see any innovation here, and I don't see any innovative ideas, innovative plan, I don't see. And then climate education, this is really, really important. As I said, like my mother, we even didn't know when I started at high school, when we stayed in the suburb area. At that moment, we didn't know. So that moment, my mother used wood as part of cooking, the way of cooking. So this is really important. And our last government, I didn't see any improvement or any action, unfortunately. And now we have the new advisor, and I heard they are planning to do something, and I want to say I can't be hopeful regarding climate change, because every time I see like people are just talking, people are just attending meeting, attending events, but there isn't any action. So unfortunately, I'm sorry, I can't be hopeful. And I also don't want you to be hopeful. I just want to say, as like the Greta Thunberg said, like I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day, and then I want you to act. Thanks.
All right, guys. Feedback to Nusrat on her presentation. If you could raise your hand electronically when you want to speak, it would be great to hear from you. Trevor.
I just want to say the end, that call to action is really like that hit home really hard.
Yeah. Paula.
I thought that the presentation was really amazing. I think that oftentimes when we think of climate change, we take, and I think she mentioned this in the presentation as well, we often think about like these big tropical storms, like the hurricanes that are happening in like Florida, but we often don't think about like the kind of day-to-day long-term effects and how devastating they can be over time and the diseases that they can create. So I thought that was really powerful.
Mm. Riley.
Yeah, I was also gonna say I loved the ending. I thought it was really beautiful. And also just the combat, I really appreciated the stories in the beginning and like the personability and vulnerability with that, which I appreciate and want to be thank you for that. And that combined with like the statistics you added after that was really a good way to structure this presentation.
Mm-hmm. Others, thoughts? Joe, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Nusrat. Um, I agree that the ending was really strong, and I also liked the use of the photographs. I think that if you use your friend's name, it will draw people closer to the story because you just kept referring to her as my friend. So that's just a little like trick to sort of pull some people in. I think that when you talked about the dengue and the COPD, I think that probably is a good place to at least give some definition so that people who don't know what those are, what it is and how it's connected to climate change. So, like, sort of when you write, you want to make sure you capture everybody who's listening, and people may not know how those things are connected to climate change. Um, and then I think that just if you went back and the flow of it was sort of jumping around, you were trying to give us a lot of information. Um, and because you were trying to give us a lot of information, there were times when you were talking very quickly. And when you were talking very quickly, I couldn't really keep up with you. So you want to make sure that you're clear. So it's probably a use of less words, but a real strong format and flow, like a beginning, a middle, and an end. Instead of sometimes the pieces could have been moved over together, and it could have been a complete sort of message, and then the next message, and the next message. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, yeah. And I, as it's like I have to done within 15 minutes, so I was trying to just uh, be hurry and then trying to say everything. So
Right.
that was the reason. Yeah.
Yeah, although I think Joe's point is, yes, you're trying to rush to get a lot out, but you have to select more from what you have. You had a lot of really important information, but you have to pick and choose more to focus more. Santiago?
And there's I thought that apart from all the information and the details you were giving, which are really good, I would like to emphasize how you touched upon the subject of there being a lack of understanding in Bangladesh for your case. And I thought it was very powerful, especially when then you said at the end that you don't have any more hope. Instead, you want people to feel the fear and then act because people don't really understand, is what I'm getting from you. So I think that was a very powerful message, how you talked about the lack of understanding and then touched it back in the end.
Yeah. Nusra, I likewise agree with a lot of the things that were said here about what was strong about your presentation. The ending, you ended very well. It was an effective way to end, to call to people, I don't want you to hope, I want you to panic, was very effective. And those stories at the beginning, I think were good. Even I think Joe made some good points about how you can make those even more effective. Um, and what I liked a lot was that you were focusing more on the things that people don't think about so much when they think about climate change, right? As you pointed out, we think of, oh, floods and, hurricanes and monsoon rains, etc. But you were pointing out all these other things like, that we don't tend to think about. And the fact that your mom was using some, I gather, I don't, for us, it's not quite clear what, at least for me, it wasn't quite clear what she was using, but I'm assuming it's maybe cow dung or something like that. It's cow shit, or something like that.
It's like wood from a tree, and that we usually use for cooking to heat the I mean, for heating, and then we just use the oven and other ways to heat the food and then we cook it. So this is like how can I say, it's like the style of rural people. So as we lived in the suburb area at that moment, so there are a lot of people, they used it, and it's still a lot of people are using it, even they don't know that it can cause the air pollution. And that's why I'm just trying to say, because they don't know. And you may have seen like the name of my presentation. It's like the silent suffering. Why I'm just calling silent suffering? Because people are suffering silently while they even don't know. So that's the reason.
Yep, yep. And it's not just pollution happening with big factories and cars, etc. It's actually in the home, as well,
Yes.
in some of our
Yeah, it's
practices.
just in our house. It's just within our daily activities, while people are not just understanding.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that was powerful, and it also it connects, right, this big issue of climate change to your own family. It's actually impacted your mom and her chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So it's really powerful. Okay, so we are at time to transition to Chia Terrence, who, as I mentioned, is joining us from United Arab Emirates, but he is from Cameroon. And a little bit of background about this, and he'll probably explain to you. But uh, Chia is a refugee, and he left Cameroon because of this civil war, this low-boiling civil war, which we generally don't hear about, at least in the United States. And I imagine in a lot of other countries, we're not hearing about this civil war because the press are not prioritizing it, right? They're in terms of war, they're prioritizing Ukraine and the conflict in the Middle East. But there are conflicts happening in other parts of the world. And so part of the value of the Family Diplomacy Initiative is hearing from people from different parts of the world who are going to tell us about things we probably haven't heard about. So Chia, you are next, and Riley, you're taking time. All right.
Hi, Paul. Thank you so much. Please, can you open my slides?
Oh, yes. I believe if you posted your slides, let me see. Hold on a second. Oh, you know what? I have can you post your slides to the because I don't have it. I'm going to give you a folder, and if you can upload your slides here, because I don't know if you did you post your slides to the oh, I see it here. I'm sorry. You posted it to
There
the
is in the
Facebook
group
group.
and also
Gotcha.
in the both side. Yes, I
Okay.
did.
Okay. Yeah, and for our purposes, it's good for you guys to upload these things in advance so we don't have to, so I'm prepared for your presentations. And okay. So and likewise, Joshua, I don't know if you have your slides prepared. Let me just make sure that because I don't have any slides in the folder. So if you could either, Joshua, if you are you sharing slides? I should ask. Joshua from Uganda. Joshua, go ahead. Oh, we for some.
Share.
What's that? Oh, I can't hear you. Go.
Yes, I can't share.
Okay. I think we're having internet issues for you, Joshua. You may want to move to a place where you have better
I've just shared with you.
it's
Can you hear me?
you're still breaking up.
I've
So
just shared with you. I don't know whether you received it.
you know what you can do is
I
just
think
communicate with us in the Facebook chat or the Zoom chat, and that will clarify what you're saying. But the point is, we need if you do have a PowerPoint presentation, or if you're experiencing connection issues, a video, that would be great to get that. Okay. So, while Joshua's setting that up, I am going to show Chia's slides and let Chia start. Oops, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. My name is Chia Terrence. I will be presenting today about war. Next slide, please. So we have, I just highlight some of the types of war we have. Like I said, what is war? War is a state of armed conflict between countries, nations, or groups, resulting in violence and destruction and human suffering. Next slide, please. And we have civil war, which is a violent conflict between opposing groups within the same country fighting for political control or separation. So, and this is the war we have right now in my country. We will talk about it later. Next slide, please. So, a revolutionary war is a war where people fight to overthrow their government or ruler, often to gain independence or establish a new system. Next slide. Okay. Yeah. So we have guerrilla war, and this is highlighted. This is exactly what is happening in my country. The separatist fighters are using guerrilla war, a type of war where a small, mobile, and irregular forces use tactics like ambush, sabotage, and raid to fight a larger conventional war army. Next slide, please. So from here, you can see this is the Cameroon military. They are always looking for separatists everywhere. The separatist fighter, they are looking for them, but they are always looking for them everywhere, but they cannot find them. And next slide, please. You will see from here, you will see these are the separatist fighters. They are somewhere very far inside their jungles and they are doing their training. From here, they will plan for their next attack, invisible attack always. This is what they do. And this is the guerrilla tactics. Next slide, please. We have proxy war. This involve indirect conflicts where one power uses third party to fight on its behalf. Next slide, please. We have cyber warfare. This involves the use of digital attacks to disrupt, damage, or destroy information system or adversaries. Next slide, please. We have a physiological war. This aims to influence the beliefs and behavior of opponents and through propaganda, other means. So from here, we will go straight to my country. Next slide, please. We will go straight to my country. Here we have like, for example, my country is in Cameroon and we are located in Central African, where we give a bundle, share bundle with Nigeria, Gabon, Central African Republic, and Equatorial Guinea. So here you have French Cameroon, which January 1st, 1960, they gained their independence, where the Amaju Ahijo was their president from that time. So next slide, please. Here is, yeah. So here is English Cameroon. English Cameroon, the French Cameroon got their independence in 1960, while English Cameroon was not with them, basically, and they got their plebiscite and reunification in 1961, and the people of British Cameroon voted to join independent Cameroon following a plebiscite. This led to the reunification of the territory, which become known as the Federal Republic of Cameroon. Next slide, please. So from here, you can see the map. The small highlighted angle This is the two regions, the two English regions. You have the Northwest region and the Southwest region. And these two regions are the English speaking Cameroon, where they joined Cameroon in 1961 to gain their independence through already independent Cameroonians. So next slide, please. So from here, you will have more details about Cameroon unity state. So the unitary state in 1972, Cameroonians abandoned its federal system and become a unitary state with Ahidjo as president. This led to the abolition of the office of prime minister and the centralization of the power in the presidency. So Paul Biya took over. Ahidjo resigned in 1982, and Paul Biya took over as a president. Biya has since maintained his grip on power, ruling Cameroon on over 39 years. Next slide, please. So this is the Anglophone crisis now. The crisis, the Anglophone crisis. The Anglophone crisis, also known as the Ambazonia. This is, they are calling the country Ambazonia. Ambazonia conflict is a separatist conflict in the northwest and the southwest region of Cameroon. And the conflict began in 2016 as a result of protests by English-speaking Cameroonians who felt marginalized and, and discriminated against the predominantly French-speaking government. Next slide, please. And the main cause of this, the main cause of the Anglophone crisis is, this is the main cause of the Anglophone crisis. Why they begin this crisis is that was on November 2021, 2016, Anglophone teachers and lawyers. These are the two people who come out to strike. No one was there with them. And the teachers and the lawyers, in Cameroon, Northwest and Southwest region, go on strike to protest against the government appointing, this is the main point, appointing of French-speaking judges and teachers in English-speaking regions. So they will appoint French-speaking judges in the court and appoint teachers in schools where children don't even understand good morning in French. In the court where even my father cannot understand good morning in French. How will my father explain a case? This was the point. Next slide, please. So you see from here, these are the lawyers. This is their placard. This is where it started. Next slide, please. This was the lawyers and teachers. This was just simple demonstration just to exercise what they feel that should be changed. Next slide, please. And this were the community following them to say they support exactly what the lawyers are saying, and the people go out behind the lawyers and the teachers to support them, that what they were going out to protest was the truth. Next slide, please. And this is in Bamenda also. Everyone come up, meaning that the situation was really not, it was bearable because they started and everyone go outside to protest, meaning that everyone feel it. Thank you. Next slide. The Anglophone crisis. Here you have the Anglophone crisis. December 2016, the government responded with force and protests turned violent. Several protesters were killed and many were arrested. January 2017, the government blocked internet access in the Northwest and the Southwest region, citing national security concerns. March 2017, the separatist movement led by the Southern Cameroonian National Council, SCNC, declared independent as the Republic of Ambazonia. So this is how the situation was going. Next slide, please. So from here, you see Anglophone crisis still. In October 2017, the Ambazonian separatists led by Sisiko, this was the president the people come up with. This is the president of Ambazonia. Ayub Tabe declared independent again, this time as the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. So that was a yes. On November 2017, the government responded with a military crackdown and clashes between the security forces and the separatist movement escalated. So in 2018, 2018, conflict escalated further and reports of human rights abuse, displacement of civilians, burning of villages. So from here, we will dive directly to my family experience as well. And you will see in 2019, conflict continued with report of fighting between separatists, militants, and the government. Till now, they are still on fighting. So next slide, please. Here you have the burning of the houses, the villages, everywhere was burning. Next slide, please. Here still, these are some of the burnings. You can see by yourself how it was really. Next slide, please. These are still the burnings. These are some of them at school, you can see. Yeah, next slide. So, yes, this is actually my family. They are of late right now. You can have the information. My late father, Chair Christopher Full, late grandma, Mami Mata, and this is my small brother, junior brother Damian. He is still in my country, Cameroon, and these two are of late right now. And in the middle of the crisis, because our home was basically burned down. These are the two main people that they were there, and they have to transfer to another location. Next slide, please. We will go there. This consider, yeah. So I myself, I consider war like the cause of all our four topics that we have been talking of about internet and gender-based violence and poverty and all. I consider war the cause of all this. The cause. In January 2020, our home was destroyed in the ongoing crisis in Cameroon. Life was stable before, but everything changed after the incidents. Next slide, please. So everything was fine until the day where our home was destroyed. So they lost their possessions and their food was burned down. They were internally displaced at the moment and moved to a nearby location where they have to seek for their safety. So at the end, I know I will be having some questions. You guys, I will be ready to answer your question. Next slide, please. So this is actually, it was burned down. This is our home. As you can see, it was burned down. This is the day 2020. That when it was burned down. Next slide, please. And at the new location, their life changed drastically and they become beggars, had no access to internet. I myself, I could not communicate with them because the internet was very poor. And and very difficult in the midst of all this. I lost my grandmom, as I mentioned before, and my father also on the 9th February 2023. Next slide, please. So yes, exactly. These are them. I lost already. They are of blessed memory right now. You can see them. This is my father, and this is my grandma down sitting right there. Next slide, please. So currently in Cameroon, currently the situation is not improving at all. The government and the freedom fighters are clashing constantly, and the fighters are using the guerrilla warfare. That is the guerrilla warfare I earlier explained, that they are invisible. So the military always looking for them, but they are nowhere to be found. And the situation is simple, that when the military are looking for these guys, and at the end where they cannot find them, the civilians will be the victims.
Yeah.
And that is what is happening every day.
Chia, just if you could finish up within about 30 seconds to 60 seconds, you're over
Yes,
time.
yes, thank you, Paul. Yes, so the civilians are always the victims. And the last but not the least, this is my own solution for this conflict. We have to go back to federal state. We have to go back. This is my solution. Plebiscite reunification in 1961. The people of British Cameroon voted to join independent Cameroon following a plebiscite. This led to the reunification of the territory, which become known as the Federal Republic of Cameroon. I think this is my point. Let's go back to Federal Republic of Cameroon, because the unity state is not working anymore. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Chia. If you could raise your hands as Hassan is doing and as Paula are doing electronically to provide feedback. Hassan.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, thank you. It's really interesting. I guess my point is really with the organization of the slides. I guess you've started with like so many topics, and I was losing track in the beginning. Like you've mentioned, civil war, English conquest, French conquest, neighboring countries, separate movements, and then you've had the zoom in lens on the Anglophone crisis. I guess you can have like in the first few slides, or at least in the first slide, like we're gonna talk about this crisis, and it involves social aspect, economic, political, uh, um, whatever you think that it really add up to that crisis, and then you start like having this zoom out, zoom in kind of a picture, and then but I also like the having the defining the concepts and referring them to the problem, and you've been doing that in a good way throughout the slides, even though it wasn't as is mentioned, it wasn't really organized in the beginning, but overall you did a great job.
Thanks, Hassan. Paula.
Hi, Gia. I know you had a lot to go get through, but one thing I think should have been mentioned is that I'm Cameroonian myself, and Cameroon has two national languages. We're the only country outside of Canada that has the national language of English and French. And so that kind of plays a part of the conflict, the fact that, both like the national languages are English and French. And actually, too, just to share a little bit about my family, most of my family is from the French side. I do have English side family members, and I went during the height of the Civil War in 2018, and it was really like crazy. I could not speak English in the French part, and I couldn't speak English in the French part, and I couldn't speak French in the English parts because like the military would like come and like take me and my family. Like it was like insane. But yeah, it's a lot going on. I couldn't get in contact with my mother because like social media was down and like so I definitely understand, and I'm so sorry that your family home was burnt down. I think that in terms of the presentation, because it's such a complicated topic, I think one of the things that I felt like you did good was you did a good overview of the topic because it's a lot. But I also think that kind of in the beginning, kind of like not really just focusing on the Anglophone crisis itself. I like the definition, but we could have cut down a little bit on that. And also too, like really making the point that like 90% of Cameroon is French speaking and only 20% is English speaking, and how most of like the schools, the government is in French, and that puts people who are English Anglophone people at a disadvantage because they have to learn French, even though most of the country should be bilingual. So that's just kind of a perspective that I wanted to like share. So yeah.
Great, Paula. Yeah, it's interesting to hear your perspective as well. Others, Joseph, sorry, Joe, it's you have the hand can't quite I can't quite see it, so that's why. But go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, my hand's blending into the background. I see. Hi, Chia.
Hi.
One of the issue when you use slides, you risk losing the personal connection. And so you become like the third piece because you create a relationship between the listener now becomes the reader. And the task is to keep up. So anybody could read the slides, and what that does is just destroys the personal connection. So um, I think that you could have bulleted a lot of that stuff and then talked about it instead of reading it. Right? It was hard. I mean, it just took away from you. And using slides when you're talking about your personal experience is a real disconnect because at that point you should be talking about how it impacted you. There's a lack of emotion, there's a lack of connection so it was more like a history lesson than
Mm.
like an impact. Like you couldn't motivate me, you couldn't bring me into the feeling of
Mm.
how the war impacts you and your family because it was just like a history lesson. Do you understand
Mm.
what I'm saying? And
Yes, I got your point,
yeah,
Joe.
Really,
Thanks.
really great points. I just want to make a kind of contextual point about this. All of our, Joe, all of our presenters for these family issue presentations, in contrast to the previous years where we were focusing on storytelling, we've asked them to provide that context, to use slides, etc., because we're currently focused less on the telling skill and more on providing information to help inform people about the problems that they're facing. But I think there's a balance to be struck here, and Joe's point is a valid one. You want to avoid, of course, reading off your slides as much as possible. I do that too, by the way, and really talking in ways that connect with your family and what happened to your family, um, and uh, uh, and um, and its connection. But I think actually I learned a lot from your presentation, and I'll say more about that in a moment, but would love to hear from Santiago first.
Hi, Gia. First, I just really wanted to thank you for sharing your story. I know it's not easy at all. And I would like to resonate Paul's point that the detail is very good and crucial because a lot of us don't know what's going on in Cameroon, like you and Paul Lee, for example. But I would definitely suggest what the others are suggesting. So, for example, maybe cutting down on the war section. Maybe we don't have to know all the definitions, but just some. So maybe you can pick and choose. I think if you could do that, could definitely get to the end of your presentation on time. Like the end where you wanted to explain how federalism might be the solution is what you think is the solution. I thought that was very interesting, but unfortunately you have to be cut down. So maybe if you can pick and choose, you'll get there.
Other comments? We'd love to hear from Juliana, Joshua, Nusrat, some of our family diplomats, as well as others who are here observing. Savius, Hilaire, Abdul. I think that's Abdul Basit, but I'm not sure. We'd love to hear from you guys. Any thoughts?
I actually had another question about the cyber aspect of it. I know you mentioned that social media was down, but I was curious, was there any other like aspects of daily life that was affected during that time, in regards to cyber warfare?
Chia, did you hear his question?
No, come again, please.
Yeah, I was just curious, during the cyber warfare part, was there any aspects of daily life for you that was impacted?
Okay. Yes, that during the cut down of the internet, correct?
Mm,
Yes, it was it was highly impacted because even the people cannot communicate to each other. So by at that time, they were using they were using some VPN stuff to manage to communicate. So I don't know the VPN exactly, and I will check it. They were using VPN to communicate with the internal collaboration, but still it
yeah.
was very hard. It was very hard. There was no communication, and actually, it was really blocked out, and you just consider to be just to check if after 1 week or 2 weeks if your person is still alive, maybe you don't even know what is happening, what is going on. So it was up to 2 months. You know, it was not
That's
it
crazy.
was not really easy.
Uh,
Yeah.
Nusrat.
I just agree with Joe, and I feel like it's more. I guess like it's more about history, like, and also I feel like there's less emotion, and I think he should connect this, and I think also he must focus on how it impacts on the particular families or how it affects after the war, or because yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Except this, everything was good. The
Yep.
definition, I really liked it. It's like more about insightful.
Yeah. So uh, recap some of the points because I think all of you made some really good points. Really appreciate Joe being here because he does this to almost like professionally, and is quite effective at storytelling. But I think that uh, it was true. I think a number of people pointed out that you didn't have to give us definitions. Paula mentioned this in Santiago of all kinds of different kinds of wars, revolutions, et cetera, and so forth at the start. You could have quickly defined war and then civil war and then gone into the context as you did, the historical context. There was probably too much historical context. You could have cut that down and then told us, as Joe and others have been pointing out, Nusrat as well, tell us more about your family story. And I think what Joe was pointing out about, I think what's peculiar is that sometimes, Chia, when you tell the story of your family and what's happened to your family, you're smiling, which is probably not the way in which you want to convey the seriousness of the
Mm.
situation. Shaping your presentation in a way that you convey more about your family and its impact on your family. And by the way, why you're in United Arab Emirates, which was not explained. So all these connections between the conflict, your family, your move to United Arab Emirates, what's happened to your family, all those things are important to this. But the history, I think you did remarkably well. I actually really like the map that showed Cameroon. So it gives us context, especially for Americans and others who may not know anything about Cameroon. You gave us that context by having that map, which placed Cameroon side by side with other countries beside it, and where the English speaking portion is. So you have a very clear kind of sense. And then you also gave us this historical progression, which was helpful as well. You just want to cut it down. So Chia, good work. You did, it looks like clearly you did a lot of work on this, excited to see you kind of further develop this. Okay, so we need to transition to Joshua, our last presenter. Joshua is joining us from Uganda and is going to be presenting on poverty, and I'm going to show his slides, which he posted to the folder. Oops, trying to. Um, uh, um, Joshua, you'll need to turn off your video because I think you've got connection issues. Riley, can you write into the Zoom chat? Yeah, okay, good. He did turn off his camera. That so his audio should improve in a moment. Joshua, go ahead.
You enable me to share or I share that side?
Hopefully your connection gets better because even just with the audio, it looks like you've got a really poor connection. Go ahead.
Okay, let me try to log in using
So we'll give you a little time. You need to move. You need to move to some place where you have better audio connection.
Okay, I'm using this to connect. Just a minute.
It may also be, I'm not sure, but it may also be the device you're using, perhaps. That might be the problem. I'm not sure. Let's give Joshua another couple of minutes to try to figure things out. He's, I think, trying to join with a different device. Thanks for your patience, guys. This is one of the limitations of work via the internet. It's not good in some places, but yeah. Joshua, go ahead and turn off your video just to make sure that you have good internet connection. Go ahead and turn.
Okay, I think this one is better.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
Just a minute. First. Okay. All right. My name is Joshua. So Paul, are you sharing from that side?
Yes, I can move the slides for you.
Okay, great. Thanks. My name is Joshua, and I'll be presenting about poverty in Uganda. I hold a BA, honors, and a postgraduate. Also, I hold a BA in social sciences and a postgraduate in project planning and management. And currently, I'm enrolled for graduate school. and I'll be talking about the poverty basically in Uganda, a review of trends and interventions. Okay, let's understand poverty. Next slide, understanding poverty. Yes, according to the United Nations, nearly half of the world's population currently lives in poverty. So what is poverty? Poverty, according to the UN, is defined as income of less than $2 per day, including 1 billion child. So people who live below the poverty line of $2 per day, the UN defines them as poor people. So fundamentally, poverty is a denial of choices and opportunities and the violation of human rights. When you look at poverty in Uganda, because Uganda is located in East Africa, in the east, neighboring Kenya, in the north, South Sudan, and in the west, Congo, and south, we have Tanzania, and the northwest, we have Rwanda. So Uganda's poverty rate, as noted according to the Development Finance Portal, it indicates that it decreased significantly from 56% in 1992 to 19.7 in 2014. And that's some of the recent, that's some of the available data. But by 2016, 2017, the eastern region, you can project, keep next, you can project. Okay, yes, keep going. I see those figures. Yeah, yeah. It's by 2016, it is noted that the eastern region had rose to 35.7%, according to the data when it comes to the poverty levels. And then the northern region saw a decline from 53.7 to 32.5. Now, by the way of things, it indicates that the northern region by 2016, 2017 had the highest levels of poverty, or people living under poverty. And then the northern region, which has been mostly affected by wars and all that, came second with 32.5%. And then the central region, where the capital is located, the capital of Uganda, the capital city of Uganda, where I also come from, central region is historically, historically had lower poverty rates. Yet by 2016, 2017, there was an increase from 10%, 10.7% to 12.7%. You can see the figure. And then the Western region, ranking at 11.4%. The recent data shows that 41% of the population is still highly vulnerable to falling back below the poverty line. which the UN indicates as living below $2, or $2.15. And this is basically due to lack of the basic needs and other disparities influenced by education, health, infrastructure development, and economic opportunities. Next slide. So let's understand the drivers and the trends of poverty. In Uganda, a few major drivers of poverty will look at the rural poverty. Poverty is basically concentrated in rural areas, in rural areas. So people living in the villages, they are highly affected by poverty. And secondly, youth unemployment also drives. Uganda is a very young population. Over 70% of the population is made up of young people. The gender inequality also lead to poverty in Uganda, and the climate vulnerability. Uganda is basically dependent on agriculture but it's highly affected by climate change and climate variability. So this leads a big number of people going back to or living under poor condition, because most farmers carry out agriculture on a subsistence scale or a subsistence way. It's not so commercial. They do not add value to what they produce. Next slide. And that leads them to poverty. How can we break the cycle of poverty? Globally, the Sustainable Development Goal 1, or we can call it the SDG 1, calls for end to poverty in all its manifestations by 2030. Its target is to reduce poverty by at least 50%. At least half of the population of men, women, and children living in extreme poverty. That's according to the global standard. And nationally, here in Uganda, the government has also tried to break the cycle of poverty, especially ever since like the ruling government came to power, the National Resistance Movement. It has implemented a number of several interventions to eradicate poverty over the years, focusing on economic development and inclusive growth. Some of the interventions that have been developed by the government and in their national plans include the Poverty Eradication Action Plan, known as the PEAP. We have the Operation Wealth Creation. We have the Youth Livelihood Program. There is the Emyoga Fund. And now currently we have the Parish Development Model. But all these interventions have not been so effective to reduce poverty. And for the educator now, the Parish Development Model is more targeting the rural communities. I think the Ministry of Science and Technology has the Innovation Fund for the educated young people who have innovation, just to target people with innovations and curb the unemployment. Next slide. Now looking at the family level, 44%, nearly half of the children in Uganda are suffering from multidimensional poverty, with rates reaching 57% for some households with 3 or more children. And this is from the Uganda National Households Survey Report 2024. This was me here in the photograph. I've gone to the village to interact with some of the villagers or to interact, and since we are so you could look at these young children who barely have these basic needs, don't have shoes, clothes, it's so you try to interact, you speak, and you give them hope. And according to me, if the government is to solve the unemployed, to reduce on the poverty level, I think it needs to start on the family level, interact and really understand the problems affecting the family. That's the bottom-up approach than just only passing policies without really understanding what is affecting the local community. Next slide. So the policy recommendations for multidimensional poverty, I would suggest that, just like how I've said, there is need to support families, especially women, with innovative ideas for community change. If you, my wife happens to be born from the village, and I happen to be from the central here. Of course, we are all from the central, but she comes from the village. So where she comes from, the community is highly affected by some of the things that I've been talking about, from the children. So very poor, very poor community, with inadequate resources. So when we came up, when we got married, and we're thinking of one of the ways we could help such community, just with a small, with a small ideas we had. So we thought maybe we can set up a demonstration farm, and people can learn from us. So this is what I'm trying to say, that the government can support like this, maybe my family, such families or other families, especially women with innovative ideas for community change. So we set up, behind us you can see, that was our garden when we first planted. We first planted maize and a few things, but still we are affected by climate change. This is what I'm trying to talk about. And then later we resolved to planting just coffee, since it's a long-term cash crop for people to learn, and maybe they can pull themselves out of poverty. And another thing, we increase social protection measure and implement area-based anti-poverty programs, especially in those areas that are highly affected, and also align strategies with the Uganda vision. Next, as I wind up. Yes, a call to action or way forward. There is need for public-private partnership for infrastructure development and training young people, especially the youth who are at risk, training and resourcing them, launch and run business, come up with incubation program for the young people to pull them out of poverty. And lastly, in conclusion, I will say the government of Uganda. Next slide. The government of Uganda has made significant strides in reducing poverty, but deep structural challenges remain, particularly in rural areas. And we need to work together, just like how I said, in public-private partnership, for greater investments in human capital, especially health and education. And policies should focus on building resilience to climate change, enhancing society safety nets, and addressing youth unemployment. Thank you so much for listening.
Great, Joshua. Feedback from you guys. We have, if you don't mind, we're going to take about 10 minutes. So just an extra 5 minutes more than usual to make sure to provide Joshua some feedback. If you could raise your hands, please. Joe. Oh, you're muted.
Hi, Joshua. Number one, I thought that the photographs were excellent. They really put you into the issues that you were presenting. I got confused at the second map with the map, the slide with the map, because you kept saying lower, higher, lower, higher. I think it could have been a little bit more clear because I really wasn't sure what I was looking at. And you kept throwing out percentages that weren't on the map. So I don't know if everybody else sort of felt that way, but I was not real clear what that map was showing, although I appreciated the map and the information, especially in the first two slides. The one thing that I'm not real clear on, you mentioned, obviously there's a poverty issue, but I'm not clear on what the causes of poverty are. And so I think you could spend a little bit more time of talking how they got there. You mentioned climate change just briefly, unemployment briefly, but how did the country get into that state, would be very helpful in sort of wrapping my head around the issue of poverty in the country.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Riley.
Yeah, hi Joshua. I was gonna say I really liked the structure of the slides. I thought it flowed really nicely and made sense. You like presented the issue, why the issue, and then solutions based off like your thoughts and then also what the government's doing in terms of the issues. I was gonna say too that I didn't really understand the map slide as well. I thought it felt a little out of place and I wasn't really sure where in context that made sense. Um, and yeah, and I really liked the solution of you were proposing about like harvesting the women's innovation ideas of like the people who are actually experiencing this poverty and like the government using their ideas and what they want and platforming those structures. So yeah.
Chia, and then we'd love to hear from some of you we haven't heard from as yet. Elena, would be great to hear from you. Gladys, glad you raised your hands. I was going to just raise that you could speak. Juliana, we'd love to hear from you. Bernard, Hilaire, Abdul, and others. Chia.
Yes, Joshua. I just want to, yeah, you make I love your presentation because, okay, you do mention that the government should sensitize the people with the information regarding how they can go about. So you have to be clear on this part also. And also, I just want to ask you, like, you say the poverty is more high rate in the villages. Do they have a market route to? Do their route accessible to the market? Or I know in villages, mostly in Africa, we do produce only agriculture. But do they have route to the market, or they don't really have that access route to the market?
I, Joshua?
Or you want me? Okay. Yeah. This is why I was proposing a solution. Thank you all for the evaluation. This is why I was proposing a solution for the need for public-private partnership. The government is trying to put up such infrastructure, build roads. We are still in that stage, constructing roads, bridges, and this electricity to the villages. You find that many people can produce, they can do the farming, but they can't add value to what they produce, because they don't have power, they don't have electricity, especially in the villages. They are poor roads to transport their produce. Those with roads, they can't afford the market, they can't access the markets. So all this is the reason as why I was proposing the public-private partnership and empowering the community using a number of interventions. The roads are there in a few areas, if I'm to answer you. And other areas, they are trying to just construct. The World Bank is giving us funds. But of course, Uganda, just like any African country, we are affected by corruption. So the policymakers, the leaders, there is a lot of corruption in Uganda. So you find that the money that is allocated to construct a road, at the end of the day, the road is not constructed. Where it is constructed, it's just a poor road, and all this draws back to poverty. Thank you.
Joshua, I gather, got into graduate school in the United States, in Texas. What are you going to be studying for your master's degree?
I didn't want to mention that, but I'm going to do public affairs, master's in public affairs.
Okay. Okay.
It's still in the process. I'm only waiting for my visa. I don't know whether they'll grant me the visa, but everything is, the universe has given me an admission. I'm only praying for a visa. So that's why I didn't want to disclose that. But I'm going for public affairs. Yes.
So I ask in part because I think what would be helpful, I think what I found, I hear the number of comments that were made. It was great to see a photo, as I think Joe pointed out, the photo of you and your wife. And it would have also been nice to see you have a son, to see your son. And the connection, I gather your family is to some extent trying to grapple with this poverty problem, but a little bit of background about your own family and your relative status, because I'm guessing you're middle class in relative terms in Uganda. But telling us about roughly your income versus the average income of a Ugandan or something like that might help to make that connection. And then talking with us more about your family and the ways in which you are connected personally to poverty in your country, I think would be helpful to tie in family. I found that the when you were talking about the causes and then I think as Joe and others pointed out, it wasn't simply that at there was this chart where or this picture of the country and the different sectors of the country and the percentages. I think part of what was confusing is simply that over a period of a couple of decades, there was a sharp decline in poverty in Uganda. But then you started talking about an increase in poverty. And so it wasn't clear what those percentages were referring to. Were they referring to a drop in poverty or an increase in poverty? But there's also this broader problem of um, explaining more precisely, and this may be of use to you in your master's work, the drivers of poverty, as I think Joe was pointing out, and the solutions that you propose, because they seem to be all over the place, and they're not quite, I guess, grounded in precise literature that's telling us, okay, this is how you distinguish this cause from this one, and this is the impact that it's having on poverty and so on. Of course, poverty is kind of difficult to measure, at least in terms of causes and consequences, et cetera, and so forth in certain ways. But I think having more precision and clarity on these different causes and then the solutions, because it seemed like that there were just a variety of solutions, some of them families, some of the climate, having dealing with climate change, youth unemployment, et cetera, and so forth. What do you consider the most important solutions, and what makes you think those are the most important solutions? What's the evidence for that?
Yeah,
Well,
Paul, just
yeah.
to like an example was that the electricity, for instance. So the question I have is, can people not afford electricity, or they don't have access to electricity? So, those sorts of things help you figure out what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. So this was great. I really appreciate Nusrat, Chia, and Joshua giving us some perspective from their different vantage points in the world on these problems that their families or other families in their countries are facing. Um, I want to give you a sense of the next meeting, which is on November 10th, and it is our last meeting in this family issue presentation series. But before we do that, I would love to take a photo of everybody. I forgot to do that. And then for those of you who have not actually indicated, so I'm thinking this is for Trevor's purposes. He's taking attendance. We need to know what country and what city you're joining from, and if you could provide your email because he's tracking these things. So I'm speaking particularly of Bernard, Savius, Gladys, Abdul, and I can't tell if that's Abdul from Abdul Basit, one of our family diplomats, and Hilaire, if you could each share in the Zoom chat your city, your country, and your email, that would be greatly appreciated. So let's take a photo, and then I will tell you about November 10 and who's going to be speaking. So if you could turn on your cameras briefly, for those of you who can, turn on your cameras so we can see you. And then on three, I will ask you to smile. On three, it is Abdul Basit. Good to see you. All right, on three, one, two, three, smile. Okay, let me also take another photo just in case here. Savius, I think we got you, but on three, one, two, three, smile. Look at the camera. Great, fantastic. All right. I think that's it for photos. I think I got everybody here. Fantastic. So the last meeting is on November 10th, same time. We will have a different Zoom, and we have again three speakers. We will have. Hold on a second. I need to actually find them. We will have Fatima, who will be joining us from Pakistan, talking about gender-based violence and its impact on families. Eric Kajinija, who is likewise, or excuse me, from Burundi, who's going to be talking about poverty in Burundi. Actually, I think yes, poverty in Burundi, and then Jules, who's likewise from Burundi. And I don't know as yet what he's going to be talking about, but those are so two presenters, both from Burundi and one from Pakistan, on gender-based violence, poverty, and possibly another topic. So we will keep you guys posted via Facebook and email. And in the meantime, thank you for the extra time that you spent with us. We appreciate you being here and for your feedback to our family diplomats. See you soon. See you next month. Bye, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.